Hello, everyone. I wanted to talk to you about why not everyone can become a great writer. But before I get to that, if you would like to support this channel, my book, The Ecstasy and the Ignominy, is available. It is essentially a combination of A Tale of Two Cities, Anna Karenina, Crime and Punishment. It has various combinations of Shakespearean language, Melvillian language, Dickensian language. It has a lot of inspirations, Hawthorne as well. But anyway, I do not believe that everyone can become a great writer simply because they have passion. I believe talent and innate ability have a lot to do with writing potential. For example, I've always been able to write metaphors well, especially ever since I was a teenager. I've always had a gift for abstract language, but this isn't really something that I learned. It's an intuition. I've always had a whisper within my cognitive faculties telling me what to write. The whisper beckons to me. It gives me inspiration. It gives me imagery. And I simply listen to the whisper, and through that I create beautiful language. But that is an innate talent that I have, and I believe it is a talent that most great writers have. I believe these superior talents allow them to create beautiful and poetic imagery and art. And not all writers have that ability. And if they lack that ability, they will not be able to truly become great in the end. And I do not subscribe to this egalitarian view of writing at all. For example, I'll show you what I mean here for example, when I wrote, this is just a standard routine sentence. Um, the other day when I was out in the woods and I wrote this from my work in progress, The Disappearance of Richard Blackwood, when I wrote, I gazed into the sea yet again. The air wedded itself to the water, a bride waiting to be carried across the threshold of night. In its bed they became one, raising my senses higher than each alone ever could. Now, that passage is full of poetic mystery and metaphor, but it's not something that I thought through logically. I simply was able to intuit and create it through the whisper. And so, to me, that is true writing talent. To me, writing talent is like sports to some degree, where it's like just as people have innate athletic talents within sports, so do they within writing, even though there's obviously a larger degree of subjectivity. And I believe that these talents are in large part genetic. There may be some spiritual components to it, but I believe that um, there is certainly, I think, a large genetic component to talent and ability. And that is not to say that um, that talented writers don't need to learn how to write. Of course they do, or they don't need to improve through writing and experience and reading. Of course they do, but the foundation allows them to reach the talented foundation allows them to reach greater capacities than other writers. That doesn't mean they'll always be operating at great capacities every day, but that is the ceiling that they can reach. And if a writer doesn't have that foundation, um, they are unlikely, I think, to reach that potential and become a truly great writer. Um, Again, I think that people, less talented people can become competent writers, but I think great writing requires something extra. It requires the writer to be transcendent, and that can only really happen through innate command of metaphor and language. Um, and that is not something that can be taught. So, in that regard, I do not believe that writing is a meritocracy at all. Now, another thing I will say though is that I do not think though that just because a writer is very talented, that means that they will necessarily be the most successful writer. Um, because quite often the most talented writers aren't understood by society. A lot of times the average mediocre writers around them are trying to drag them down, and so just because a writer is talented, that doesn't mean that they will necessarily succeed financially. And I actually think that one of the things that would benefit um, many talented writers would be as if this view that because schools are often um, taught through this idea that every writer is the same, we can get them up to a certain benchmark, and therefore the truly talented and the truly exceptional writers can be stifled by that. But to me, if if it were actually realized that there are talented and exceptional writers that stand out, more energy and time could be given to them instead of pretending that all writers are equal in that regard, which they are not. Um, and This might sound somewhat cruel, but to me, the real cruelty, though, is when truly exceptional and talented writers are stifled, I think, by the unexceptional majority. To me, that's the true tragedy. And so, no, I don't think that all talent is equal, or that all everyone can become a great writer just because they really want to be. I think that's a pleasant fiction, but this is the hard truth in my book. And now, and I think that I think that, for example, that there are certain writers that they can have far less, let's say, experience, reading experience, or writing experience, but because they have, let's say, an innate ability to create language to make it beautiful, they can still be much more effective than other writers who have far more experience. I've measured my writing up against writers who I know are more well read than I. And in some cases, I think that I am much better than they are still. And now reading has helped me as a writer immensely. I would not be as great of a writer without reading. Um, and but my the whisper, so to speak, can take that talent. It the whisper can take what I've read and enhance it even more. It can make it even more beautiful than someone who perhaps doesn't have that whisper. And and so I think that's something that people need to grapple with. And again, it's not that hard work hasn't refined my talent. It has, but I started with the base point that other writers, I think, simply do not have. And this is something that I think many people need to grapple with. Um, that not all that when it comes to talent, not everyone is equal. And I think it's ultimately a lie to tell people that. I think it's more cruel to encourage people to succeed in an area where they're obviously not the most talented, when they could be encouraged to go into an area where they may succeed more. To me, it's more compassionate to do that instead of instead of lying to people and saying that they have talent when they don't necessarily have talent in an area. And now I will say that writing talent doesn't always necessarily manifest as a child. In some cases, you might not experience it until your teens or early 20s. Like, I didn't really have a command of language when I was a child. It was more didn't manifest really until I was a teenager. And then once I hit 25 and my brain started to peak, I really started to develop it. Um, but but by early adulthood, I think most writers, if they have any talent, will start to show it in some degree. And this has nothing to do with spelling or grammar, by the way. This has to do with the ability to make music out of writing, and that's a talent that cannot be taught. And so I thank you for listening. I know this is a quite a controversial take, and but I thought I wanted to express it in its full capacity because this is an opinion that I have held for a long time. So thank you for listening.